Hello, everybody. Welcome into our latest live feed. Today it's Tuesday, the 19th of November, 2024. My name, of course, is Kerry Holzman. And today we got a doozy of a build, a doozy build. This is going to be the, what I hope, final piece to what we started earlier with our AMD 9900X. And as you can see in front of me, the desk, the workbench in front of me is completely filled with parts. This is going to be a Lian Li themed build, but not because Lian Li even knows my name, but because through your contributions and support and generosity, we've been able to take the membership funds and super chat funds and Amazon gift cards and buy everything that's on the counter in front of you. That means the new Lian Li 011 Vision Compact that contains 0 fans. It comes to us bare naked. So we've got fans for the back, fans for the bottom, and a $270 all-in-one liquid cooler. That's pretty fancy. That's going to go along the back side here. That's a total of what, 3, 6, 9 fans plus this power supply fan is 10. That's a lot of fans in the system. For the power supply, we have a Thermaltake 850 watt. Everything is in white. We also bought white matching RAM, and the cooler we put on here is just temporary, just so we could verify everything was working. This cooler will come off so that we can put the all-in-one cooler in. Now, the motherboard does not contain any Wi-Fi, and I saw something on Amazon. If you're a member, you already saw me talk about this yesterday, but over at Amazon, there is now an RGB Wi-Fi card, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, so I had to buy it. Now, when I say it's an RGB Wi-Fi card, let me step over to the camera so you can get a close-up of this box. The antennas for the Wi-Fi have RGB, and the card has RGB. Why? I have no idea, so I had to buy one. If you want to pay more than you need to for something that will not improve your performance, reliability, or security, I mean, why not spend the extra money to get the pretty lights? If we want to add Wi-Fi, we could use this. I just had to show it to you because I thought how stupid it was. Now, in the meantime, these fans that we bought, these were returned items, so that saved us, well, let's just say each box of fans is a little about $100, $110 for 3 fans, each one of these, right? And cooler about $270. Power supplies, I think about $140, $150. The case is another, I don't know. We'll look at it. Well, you know what? Let's go look at our parts list right now real quick. If we go over to our links, all the links for everything in this build are in the video description below the video. So we got a $120 case here. That's fairly reasonable. They make 2 versions of this. This is the compact version. As big as it is, I want you to keep in mind, this is considered compact. So let's go over to our window capture mode here so I can share the screen with you. Here we go. All right, so that's the Lian Li 011 Vision Compact. It's white, tempered glass. Now you'll notice the top they have on display is all glass, but the top we have is metal. You can do either one. The glass is included. So one way or the other, you're going to have an extra top. I intend to put that glass top on because I think it looks pretty good. Then you've got the processor we used in today's build, the 9900X 12-core. Now this was $440 when I bought it, plus sales tax came out to like $465. And the day it arrived, it dropped $50 in price. So I don't know that it's going down again anytime soon, but with the holidays and coupons, maybe it will, but it's a great price for this CPU. Moving over to the next link is our ASRock it's an X870 Pro. This says it has Wi-Fi, so what's the deal? Oh, you know what? This does have Wi-Fi. I guess I was just looking for an excuse to show you that RGB Wi-Fi card. We have Wi-Fi already built into this board. It's a $238 board, so it's not exactly cheap, but it's not expensive. It falls somewhere in the middle and is a great pairing for that 9900X. The next link over is our CPU socket frame. These are a complete waste of money, and I don't recommend you buy them. We had this left over in inventory, and I thought I'd use it. That's the only reason why it exists in this build. This is the Lian Li Hydroshift 360 all-in-one liquid cooler. You'll see it's $260 plus sales tax. That brings it about $20 more here in Phoenix, so it's right around $280. Now you'll see there's different versions down here and different colors and whether or not you want RGB, and that affects the price by as much as $60. So We've got the 360 TL, and we wanted to make sure that the additional fans we bought were the same kind of fan, or the RGB is not going to look right. That's the problem. So whatever you decide for in your aesthetic, you need to ideally buy all the same make and model. The reason we have two different boxes of fans here is one of these boxes of fans rotates in the reverse direction, because if we're going to put fans at the bottom of the case, we don't want them blowing air out, we want them blowing air in. In order to do that, the fans, regular fans, would have to be flipped upside down so the RGB is shining at the floor. We want the RGB shining up, therefore we need reverse fan blades. Now for RAM, we've got this G.SKILL Ripjaws M5. It says it's for Intel, but there's no such thing as it's for Intel. That's a marketing gimmick that they've tested it with Intel. So if you wanted this and said, I really want it for AMD, don't worry about it. It works with AMD just fine. Next over, we have the crucial, the T705, which is the fastest Gen 5 drive on the market as of November 19th, 2024. No faster NVMe drive exists on the planet, in the consumer space anyway. We're looking at 14,500 megabytes per second. We did verify we are in fact getting that on this board, which is stupidly insane. Power supply is a Thermaltake Toughpower GFA3 Snow Edition. It's 850 watts, 80 plus gold. It's fully modular. Then we've got the first set of fans here. You see these all interconnect together with just one cable right out here for the power and RGB. These are reverse spinning fans. That means they're going to go on the bottom of the case. Next over, oh, and by the way, $105 for those three fans. The other three fans may look identical, except these are the TL120 displays, which they both should be TL120s. Yeah, they are both TL120s. One's reverse, and one is just regular. And because it's regular, it's $10 cheaper to go in the right direction. I don't know why. And that's, yeah, $100. And then over here, that stupid Wi-Fi RGB. I like how it says not for AMD motherboards. That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. There's no such thing as an Intel or AMD based Wi-Fi card. Well, let me rephrase. The chip on the card is probably made by Intel. Intel does make network adapters, but plenty of AMD motherboards use Intel-based network adapters, or MediaTek or Realtek, or, you know, that's irrelevant. And somebody's made a marketing mistake here to say it's not for AMD motherboards. $60 for that. You could apply a 20% coupon. That's about $12 off. Yeah, I guess, you know, just so you know it's there. It's your money. Wi-Fi antennas. I mean, how have you gone all your life without RGB Wi-Fi antennas? All right, let me get back over to the main screen and say hello to everybody so we can start today's build off. And who's joining us here? Jump over to my chat room. Hey, there's everybody. Welcome to our good friend Buster, Peter Laycock, joining us from Scotland with a 10-pound super chat. Buster says, good evening, Carrie and Mara and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, with a temperature in Edinburgh right now, 33 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a 0.5 degrees Celsius. Whew, ooh, that's cold. Let's see. Go back over here. Tudakali became a member here. Welcome, Tudakali. And Sean, also a new member here. Welcome to both Sean and Tudakali. Thank you for joining our tech club and for supporting our channel. If you're watching this video live, we encourage you to jump into our chat room and say hello. We'd love to hear from you. We just ask for people to be kind. And if you don't say hello, we don't know you're watching. And it's a great way to interact with the content creator and the other viewers versus just passively watching like it's a TV show. Luke Greenia says hello from Vermont, and Scott says hello, as does Mark Gaines, joining us from Northern Ireland. Marsman50 says, hey, I'm early today. It's a misty 50 degrees in Holman, W. I don't know what W means. Usually states have two abbreviations, but let's see. Computer Lens says, amazing, thinking of doing a fourth build, or is it 5? I'm not a fan of AMD, but Intel only. You know, they've reached a point now where the difference between them is almost imperceptible, in my opinion. There's some fanboyism going one way or the other. I think you just choose whichever one you want to for any reason. It doesn't have to be a logical reason. You may just like Intel better for no reason that you can explain, or you might like AMD better for no reason, or because you like the color of the box it comes in better. Overall, they're pretty much six of one and half dozen of another. At this point, AMD has matured to a point where they're almost imperceptibly different in price, performance, and value, unless you're playing games. And if you're playing games, you have a different set of priorities than everybody else. Probably also means you got a lot more money and a lot more time on your hands to spend the extra money for the gaming and to spend the extra time for the gaming, which is great. Don't get me wrong. Very jealous of that. I would love to sit around and play games all day. But I've got to earn a living so I can pay the bills. And I also enjoy helping clients where there is something at stake, like helping other businesses stay in business and help their customers, making sure that their customers stay satisfied, because that company's employees can't help the customers if their systems don't work. That's a lot of responsibility, but it also means it gets me out of bed in the morning. Whether I'm in the mood or not, people are counting on me. It's not like, oh, I really want my game to play today. You know, it's not a high urgency for me to get out of bed in the morning for that. But, you know, to each their own. Also, hello to Mark Baggett and John Lewis. John, I believe, joins us from Brazil. Joe Martin says hello, as does Richard DeFries, Eddie Casanova, and Phil Stodd. Raj D saying hello, along with Dennis Kine and Craig Dowler. Ron Barnish, Colin Hilton. Wow, I haven't seen Colin Hilton in a long time. Colin says, I've lost my blue spanner. We got to put that back. You know, the capture card we used to do these live videos was provided to us many years ago by our good friend Colin Hilton out there in England. Good to see you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. Chico48 says, I like this TV channel. It's not TV. Darren Gilholm says hello from the UK, as well as Bryce Hoskins saying it's 13 degrees Celsius in the Hutt Valley near Wellington, New Zealand. It may rain later. Right on. Right on. We got the whole world watching. No pressure, Kerry. Don't screw it up. Steve Chappelle says hello, and Dazzle555, also in the UK, saying hello. William Denton and Shop Persian Rugs all saying hello. Right on. Thanks, guys. And I know many of you are saying, please do screw it up. That's the best part of the video, is watching you screw it up. All right. Well, you probably won't be disappointed. However, I will say the last couple videos, I've been a little frustrated with some of the build quality and difficulties of part fitment and lack of cable management from lesser known case manufacturers who sell at a budget price, use cheap materials, and make the build process far more difficult than it needs to be. I mean, I could build this in a cardboard box, you know, in an old Amazon shipping box, if I don't care about how it looks and I don't care about cable management. Why even put it in a case at all? So if I'm going to put it in a case, then the difference between a good case and a cheap case is $20, $30, or $40. How many times do you buy a case? Just buy it once and you'll have it for a very long time. You buy a cheap case, you're going to buy it numerous times probably, because you're not going to want to build in it again. You're going to want to do something different, or you may not like how it's aged poorly or scratched or dented so easily. The major name brands have cases that are thicker materials. They're built better, the parts fit better, and they often have consideration for cable management. And if you're going to add a bunch of fans, every fan needs power. If you're going to add a bunch of RGB and every fan is RGB, you're going to need an RGB cable for every fan. And if you're trying to cram 10 pounds of stuff into a 5-pound bag, you're going to quickly find out that it isn't going to fit, or you're going to have to make some compromises, and the system will not turn out anywhere near as nice as what you intended to build. So some parts in the computer industry are worth spending a few extra dollars for. But you also reach a point of diminishing returns. I see cases that are $600. I wouldn't spend $600 on a case unless it was something really special, once in a lifetime kind of a build, or a client had personally requested it. At the same time, spending $60 for a case isn't that bright either, unless you really like the challenge of making everything fit in very confining spaces and figuring out how you're going to be able to close your rear panel when all the cables are back there, and it won't close the rear panel anymore because that case manufacturer didn't give you any room for those. That means you got to move your cables up front in front of your glass window where everybody can see them in front of your motherboard and the beautiful work you did. And it's very disruptive and distracting, and maybe you can tie them up and push them off to a side, but it looks terrible. So you can take $1,000 worth of computer parts or $2,000 worth of computer parts, and you can put them in a $25 case, a $50 case, a $100 case, a $200 case, or a $5,000 case. And that case has nothing to do with anything but the aesthetic. That's all it is. What look are we going for? You want it small and portable? Is it going to sit in a corner where no one's going to see it? Do you want a showpiece that you're going to light up like a Las Vegas marquee? It's all available to you at price. I'm suggesting stay away from anything over $200 and stay above anything under $100, and you should have a pretty good case. Now, if these $100 cases go on sale, right, and you can pick it up for 80 bucks, great. Anything from NZXT is fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you're looking for something that has a different design, because all the NZXTs kind of look alike, I got bad news for you. Everything looks like the NZXT. It almost doesn't even matter anymore. These fish tank aquarium designs are what's in. That's all everybody's doing now. Nobody can come up with an original idea. And when they did come up with an original idea, everybody copied it. So there's very little variety to choose from today if you want a case that's just strictly business with no glass and no RGB. They do exist. They're not generally the best. Be Quiet still makes some reasonable cases, but even Be Quiet and Antec jumped on board the aquarium fad. I don't think this is going to go on more than 2 years. I hope it doesn't. And the sooner we move on from this, the better. The good news for me is I've only built about 3 aquarium style cases. I think this will be number 4. And after that, I'm not interested in it anymore. I don't mind a glass panel, but this whole glass front and panel, who's this for? You know? And then there's the other consideration is, what if you put this computer on your left side? You don't even get to see the glass anyway. So if you're somebody that moves your computer to the left, you can buy specialty lefty cases where everything's reversed the other way, but it does limit where you can orient the PC if you really want to show it off. You need to have a proper place for it to be seen. I was raised in an era where no one was interested in looking at the gray box your computer came in. Your monitor sat on top of it. You know, it was basically a monitor stand. It served dual purpose. Now, you know, this is the situation we're in, and it does appear the PC building fad is fading, unfortunately. So I think selection, unless the culture changes, it does appear that we can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel on this, where this may become much more niche. It's pretty niche now, but it used to be more common. You know, you can look at any build videos on YouTube that have been posted in the last year, and you'll see everybody's view numbers are very, very much a third or a quarter of what they were the same time last year or the year before. It seems like the culture's moved on and the interest is waning. There'll always be diehard PC builders, even 20 years from now. It's just the ease with which you'll be able to find parts, as well as the selection of parts, will be significantly decreased when the demand isn't there from the public anymore. It's kind of sad, but you know, I could be wrong, and this could just be a temporary dip. But normally when things dip, like VHS, VCRs, and standard definition televisions, they rarely go backwards. They rarely go back and say, oh, let me go back to that old school way of doing things. So this is becoming old school. We're right in that. If you could see a graph where everything's new and exciting, and then over here it's dull and boring, we're right at the middle, maybe just a little past that middle point where it's declining down. And, you know, for those of you still into it, don't let that discourage you. Just be prepared for what's coming. If you build something really, really good today, spend the extra money, because if I'm right, and part selection, case selection, all this stuff starts dwindling because interest is fading, you're going to have a computer, if you build it right, that should easily last you 10 years. So like today's build will easily last 10 years. I don't know how long this pump will have. I will say that if you buy a good quality liquid cooler, it should last 6, 7, 8 years these days. If you buy the cheapest one you can buy, you're probably going to have to replace it after about 3 to 5 years because the pump will die. We bought a Silverstone cooler. No, Silverstone sent us a cooler to review and it died in 1 year. We had a couple from Enermax that we used on Threadripper. All 3 of them died. So when it comes to coolers, unless you want to keep swapping them out and buying, you're not really saving any money if you have to buy it 3 times at $100 a piece, plus all the labor and time it takes to undo and redo the build, unless you enjoy that sort of thing. Get yourself an NZXT cooler, get yourself a Lian Li cooler, get a high quality cooler that costs a little bit more and just keep it forever, statistically speaking anyway. Then it doesn't really matter. Then the market can do whatever it wants to do and the culture can move in whatever way it wants to move and you're good to go. You know, with NVIDIA coming out with their 50 series graphics cards, they're just making these graphics cards more and more elitists for the rich. And if you're not going to be super wealthy, on top of the fact that game production costs have gone up and game quality has gone down, new gaming ideas have sort of faded. Investors are less likely to want to invest in a big gaming project that could be, you know, $100 million and take 3 years, and then it comes to market and it's a dud, and all the investors lost all their money. It's tough. It's a really tough industry. And as a result, there's a high risk for any investors. So investors are going to be risk averse when it comes to investing in that market right now. I don't expect to see much happening. I hope I'm predicting all of this wrong, but I'd rather be wrong than not prepared. So again, by just going a little extra now, we know we don't have to worry if it happens because we're good for the next 10 years with a system like this. Now, let me get rid of this Wi-Fi card because we don't need that. And I'm trying to figure out how I want to start this build because, you know, we can easily put the fans in the case. That's super easy. I could slap the power supply in here. This is also going to be very easy. I think maybe we just start with putting the motherboard in and getting it out of the way and just prepping the case overall. So maybe motherboard and then power supply and then the fans and then the cooler. Let's see how much of this we can get done today because I'd like to have everything unboxed and installed into the case. And at the end of it, just maybe some cable management. You think we can do that in the next 90 minutes? Well, if you've been watching this channel, you'll say, hell no. But it's all right. We're going to try anyway. So let me just find a place to set this stuff for now. Power supply is brand new. Everything is brand new. Just the fans were returned. So we've had some returned items from Amazon where whoever had it before us like took their crappy old fans and put them back in the box and ripped off Amazon. And then Amazon never checked them. And they sold them to us. That happened on the Big Beast build. If you're in a hurry and you want to get your build done, don't experiment with buying returned parts. On the other hand, if you don't mind knowing you might have to return something because you bought it used, you can save some money and make sure it's coming from Amazon warehouse so there's no surprises on the returns. However, if making sure that it works out of the box is important to you and having that full warranty from the manufacturer is important to you, buy it new. Shop Persian Rugs just renewed support. Right on. Thank you, Shop Persian Rugs. OG Gaming saying hello. There's Frankie B joining us. Here's the documentation that came with the case. And then down here, this is the top glass panel that we can put on that replaces this metal one up here on top. And there's your full 360-degree view. As you can see, we've got our USB ports down at the bottom. We have a relatively cheap kind of power cable. I'm a little disappointed that this is just a cutout piece of plastic that bends back and forth. It's not a physical, the physical micro switch is behind it. It's literally a piece of plastic they cut 3 sides on. It's not a button. I don't know, it just feels cheap to me. Now, in all fairness, that's pretty much what the Corsair 200R had as well. Maybe not quite that cheap, but this case was quite a bit more money than a 200R. But for what you get for the money, it's a really good deal. I mean, tempered glass is not cheap. The idea that you can switch this top out is certainly appealing to me, so you can have your own personal taste there without having to pay extra. And then you have this whole section. I don't know if you can see how wide that is, but that is all cable management area back here. So we should have no problems with cable management. And as wide as that is, with being able to take off the top, the side, and the front, we should be able to get hands in with no fitment issues for any parts. The fact that we're using Lian Li case, Lian Li fans, and Lian Li coolers suggests to me it should all fit together very, very well. You don't have to keep everything from the same manufacturer. Quite often you could save a lot of money if you go to some non-name brand manufacturer for the fans. But if you don't make them all the same, they won't. Some will be brighter, some will spin louder. It won't fit or look right. So depending on how important the aesthetic value is to you. Now, as far as getting this apart, I've never worked on one of these before, and I'm going to try and do this intuitively to see if it makes sense to me as a professional computer repair technician. For over 30 years in the industry, I shouldn't have to read manuals. A manufacturer shouldn't come out with anything more complicated. As we move on with this technology, it should be getting easier and easier, not the other way around. That's part of the reason I don't read the manual. The second reason is we are live and unscripted. So you want to just stand there staring at me, reading a book. It's not very riveting for you to watch that. So we're just going to go live. Also, when customers call for service, when you do field service work, you never know what you're going to work on. You know, when you work in a corporation, you're always working on the same hardware. You've got standard hours, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you follow company procedures and policies. That's your job. When you do field service work like I do, you rarely see the same computer twice, and there's no time to study it because otherwise you'll get no work done. Just show up, figure it out, get it fixed as quickly as possible so you can save your customer money, get them back up and running so they can get back to their work. And so you get done earlier, you can go help the next customer. The more customers you can help in a day, the more money you make, the more people you're helping in your community, and everybody's happy. And again, that's not going to happen reading a bunch of books. You have to actually do it. It does look like we've got some kind of seal on here that's keeping me from pulling this panel off. Maybe the panel slides backwards. Not sure how this works. We're not off to a good start if I can't figure out how to get the glass panel off. It may just be that it's new and it's tight, but I don't want to break anything. Something is holding it on right here. We just have this one thumb screw, and typically on these side panels, if you only have one thumb screw, then something else is holding it up here. And it could be a latch that it slides into, but normally there'd be something to pull it if that were the case. And when you have a tab like this sticking out right here, I don't know how well the camera can pick that up, that usually indicates you push it out, that's why that's there. I'm being a little overly gentle with this because it's brand new and I'm unfamiliar. I could have prepared myself better by watching some other videos. This is not the first video on this case. I think maybe the lid is holding it down, so I'm going to just take the lid off. And you'll notice the lid has 2 thumb screws here. And you shouldn't have to take them all the way out. They'll stay captive so you don't lose them. And then if we pull the lid back towards the back of the case, it'll slide back about 1/2 inch, and then typically they lift straight up. That's exactly what it did. So that's why I say, when you've been working on computers as long as I have, there are typical standards in the manufacturing process and how things go together. Now, was that holding on this other piece? I don't know, but at least I can see down and see what's going on with what's holding it. It does appear that perhaps, not exactly sure, but it almost looks like there's something screwed down, that a physical screw is holding that in place. And so using brute force on it would be a terrible idea. Let me get my glasses out and take a closer look. And at any point, we could pull the manual out and look at it. There's nothing like pulling out a manual in front of a customer to really lose that customer's confidence. So I try to avoid doing that. Now, looking at it, there is a piece of metal here. And it could be that it's screwed in, or it could be that it's a really strong magnet and I'm not pulling hard enough. But I'm not going to default to the pulling it hard. I do see a piece of tape here, and this piece of tape may be what's preventing me from pulling this off. That was probably placed there in shipping to protect the glass. And you can see we've got, it actually peels all of the protective plastic, which I usually save to the end. But that's all right. We'll go ahead and take that off now. We also have a piece of, it's almost like an edge protector. There's like a piece of, what do you call this? It's like a T-molding. Not exactly a T-molding either. It's just like an edge protector, rubberized edge protector. I don't think that's supposed to stay on there. I think it's just there for shipping. So we'll take that off. And then while we're taking the plastic off, we might as well do the peel over here on this side as well. Oh, now it just popped off without me trying. See, that's why you never want to use brute force on a computer. It either comes off easily or you're doing it wrong, so slow down. You know, once you realize, yeah, I'm probably putting a little too much force on this, stop what you're doing and try and look at it from another perspective. You're missing something. As I mentioned, in field service work, you're expected to just know how all this stuff works. That's why the customers are hiring you. And so by having to read manuals or slow down and, you know, while you're reading, you're not getting any work. The customer's like, why am I paying you to read? Right? Because customers are often billed by the hour. But yeah, that just comes off super easy now. What a difference. And then we still have some plastic on the inside to peel off as well. And that's really going to make that glass shine. Let's pull that down. Now, the original idea behind this build was to just simply put together an AMD 9900X just to showcase it against an Ultra 7 265K because they're both so similar in every way, it's hard to tell them apart. And then through one event after another, if you've been watching the channel, cases not being what I thought they would be, and the chip being a lot better than I was expecting, we ended up with a build that's going to be a flagship build versus just like a typical everyday build. There's no reason to think of this as ordinary simply because it's a 9900X. This is going to be a flagship build with using a less than $400 CPU. I think that says a lot for the motherboard, and I think it says a lot for the CPU itself and how it performs. And I guess it depends what you're comparing it against. But I will tell you, you will not be upset if you choose an Ultra 7 265K or a 9900X. You'll basically spend the same money for everything, and you'll basically be happy with both of them. Unless you're a gamer, you'll like the AMD better because its built-in graphics are better. Other than that, they're almost identical on every other platform, so or any other software need. All right, I'm still figuring out how this case comes apart. There's a piece here that opens up for some reason, and I don't know why this is off. No idea. I know this lid has to come off for us to put the glass in. So we might as well just go ahead and take it off and put it out of our way since we're going to be taking it off anyway. Now, if we wanted to put fans up here, we could. But if we do that, we won't be able to put the glass top on. This is a personal choice. I prefer the glass top. So we'll save all the screws. I don't know how the glass top attaches yet. Okay, how does that come off? I see 3 screws in the corner here that have me a little bit thrown, because it looks like this front glass is attached. Oh, I see. The front glass has 2 thumb screws right down at the bottom here that obviously have to come out. So there's one here, and there's one towards the back. And then we'll see what happens. I thought maybe this could come out. Huh. Well, this screw would have to come out. That's obvious. That one's got to go. And probably the same one on the other side would also have to come out. That would make sense. Okay. But we're still being held in with these 2 screws up here. Now that one is holding in, oh, this is interesting. This is like a support bar that's right here. Interesting, interesting. I imagine that's probably going to have to stay somehow. Let's figure this out. I'm sure it's incredibly simple. That much I'm... Given that it's Lian Li and they're well known for quality, I don't imagine that this is going to be overly complicated, and I hope I'm right. Now, we've taken a lot of screws out of here, and then that enables us to lift this whole piece out. And we're not going to use this piece on this build today. So I'll just set it over here for now. And again, when you buy a good case like this is why I say you can use it for 10, 20 years. Because if you decide you don't want that glass anymore, as long as you kept that piece and these little screws, you can completely change the case. Now, with the extra piece of glass that we have, I'm just curious, how does this fit on here? Once again, we've got the plastic to peel off. Now, ideally, we wouldn't put this on yet because leaving this wide open is going to make it super easy to work on. There we go. So if that goes into the back, what does it lock into? Oh, there's like a little L there. Okay. And that goes on like that. Okay, but then what does this mean? Does this mean this support piece doesn't stay in anymore? I gotta guess. I just have to guess. I'm not sure. Because there doesn't seem to be any way to secure this piece any longer. So this must be for just the added weight of a cooler or something on top. It looks like it needs to come out as well. And I think that's going to give us an overall cleaner look. I just want to visualize this before we put any parts in here to make sure that I understand what I'm doing. So if that piece goes on there, and then we tighten these thumb screws up, and then if we take our glass panel and put it back, you see the glass panel doesn't have any black framing around it. Did you notice that? It's got a little white on 2 sides. And this also has white on 2 sides from here to here. And I guess you just want, it's like a racing stripe or something. If we set this down in here, it's got a little nub that fits into a hole in the case here. Oh, that's a very different look. Yeah, and then we just tighten that one thumb screw down. It's completely flush. There's no framing here. Looks like there's maybe plastic on the inside of that. And then, of course, we have this weird piece that went up here, which, again, I don't know what that's for. I'd have to look into that. I mean, that goes together really easily versus all the cursing I was doing on that last case we saw. Now, this and the other piece apparently go together, and this is probably just for added weight support. That would be my guess. And again, if you wanted that information, I'm sure it's all in the manual, or other YouTubers have probably already covered this. All of these screws then we will not use, apparently, and we'll want to save these. So what I'm going to do with them, just to make sure I don't drop them on the floor and then lose them in the carpet, is I will put them in a little Ziploc bag. We'll just use the bag the instructions we're not reading came with. And now this bag does have small holes for like air pocket holes. So if we jiggle it around, I'm sure the screws will fall out and scatter all over the floor. So I need to be mindful of that as well. But for now, I'll just set that down there. That's what we're working with today. All right, that's the ultimate goal, is to make it look like this, but with fans and a motherboard in there. You wouldn't see the power supply because that's hidden in the back. And I really like how they've got a power supply frame here that you can take this frame out, attach it to your power supply, slide the whole thing in. Very well thought out. And this is the difference between, you know, a sub $100 case and a $100 plus case. When you're talking about main manufacturers like Lian who've been doing this for a while. Also, there is some feedback from a group called PC Master Race. They're a group of computer enthusiasts who apparently don't know history and how insulting the name Master Race is, which I really wouldn't want to be associated with that name, and I think it's shameful. However, when it comes to PC building, there's probably no better source for information than that enthusiast community who have just done very poorly in picking a name for themselves. So be that as it may, let me find where I can start placing these items. Obviously, we're not going to use this lid either, right? Because we're done with this lid. So we don't need this. So that's 3 parts we've taken off in order to put this glass on that we will not put back on. However, if we save them, we can change this case in a few years and make it look completely different. Let's see. I would assume this rear panel also comes off some way. Just lift up. Feels like it wants to lift straight up, but usually there's something you can pull on, some indicator. Was it? Yeah, there's definitely a seam. It's definitely all one piece. There's a couple of drive bays back here underneath the power supply for 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch drives. There is some play in this. It is moving, but something must have it locked in, would be my guess. I'm not quite sure yet. Let's get to that in a minute, because what I need to do is just safely put this glass away so we can open this up and we can start seating the motherboard in it. Now that I've got myself oriented, not quite sure where I can place this glass where it will be out of harm's way. Bear with me for a second as I get a little bit impulsive and creative with placing this glass somewhere where I won't accidentally bump into it. It is tempered glass, so it's pretty tough stuff. However, I don't want to scratch it. I'm just looking. I'm going to find somewhere creative. I think that'll do. And now this other piece of glass, as I mentioned, there are 2 thumb screws right down at the bottom here, right on the inside. And I believe we're going to have to take those off, and there does look to be more plastic. And I'm going to guess if we take this screw out, oh, those are in tight. All right. Interesting. I'm really curious what all these screws are for on this piece right here. What does this do? Does that all come out? Well, one thing at a time. Let's go ahead and get these screws out here. Now these are not captive and these are different from all the others. We definitely want to make sure we remember where these go. Something's still holding us in. Remember, we don't want to use too much force on anything. It looks like there is a lip that's holding this in that would require the removal of this top piece. But I'm really interested in why this top piece comes off. Because there's a lot of screws that hold it in. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 screws that hold that in. And I'm not sure what they're holding in on the other side. I wonder, could we just take out the screws closest to this side, and do these screws then just hold something in? I know one way to find out. Well, these aren't screws. Those are rivets, Carrie. You're not getting those out. That is riveted. Okay, well that's riveting. Need more powerful glasses for that, I guess. So when it comes to removing this piece of glass, yeah, I can see how it's secured in there really well between the screws. And when you saw how the other glass and the support corner went together, it's really well fit. You can tell that this piece here that we're going to put our liquid cooler, this comes out, so you can work on it outside of the case. This piece that we'll put the fans on the bottom, you can see the screws that hold this in and the little metal tabs, so that comes out, so you can add the fans outside of the case here. These will be the reverse blade fans. And there's a little filter. Look how easy that is to remove. Unlike those screens that don't have any frames that I complain about, how you have to tip the computer on its side. This, you can easily clean the dust filters on this without having to put the computer onto its side or even have to move the computer, as long as you've got the space enough to get that filter out. And it's got little magnets on it that will help lock it into place once you seat it properly. This giant grommet right here is big so that you can feed the head of the pump, the liquid pump, through here, and then hide all your cables as much as possible. So overall, I am much happier with this design than what we saw prior. And then when it comes to this rear panel, I'm still trying to kind of figure out which way this goes. Part of me thinks it should go, well, the metal part of this, it moves up and down. So there's something still locking us in here. I feel something under here. What is underneath? Oh, I am not a fan of this. Having cables exposed outside of the case is particularly dangerous if you happen to live in an area that has critters like mice. They'll chew through this stuff. Also, it's a little naked. It's a little exposed. This should be inside of the case, in my opinion. No wire should ever be exposed on the outside of a case. This feels a little hacky. Not happy with that. So we found one thing I don't like. We got a lot of rivets, lots of rivets, but also a lot of screws. So when you're looking at how things come apart, pay attention to that, because there may be some things that are that for whatever reason they have screws, but are riveted in, and then those screws might be doing something else than you realized. So go slow as you're taking it apart. And as I mentioned, this is not a brand new case. Many other channels have done videos on them. I've not watched them because I want to figure this out. You know, I don't want any cheats. The good news, if this is riveted in up here, means that this is likely a very simple removal process of finding a panel that either pulls away, you know, pulls backwards or pulls sideways. And it may be that in order of the panels that you take off, one panel may have to come out first, and then the other panel will come off second. And I think that's what I'm encountering right now, is simply the order in which they need to come off. I do feel like the secret is back behind this panel, and I'm still looking for the magical way that it removes, which could be this. You know, there's a couple of big thumb screws right here that are different than everything else, but I think those simply hold the drive tray in, but I could be mistaken. Back behind this panel, there is a very nice sorted set of screws. It's not just a bunch of screws thrown into one plastic bag like we've seen on the cheaper cases, and sort them out yourself and good luck figuring out where they go. Once again, when you deal with Fantex or NZXT or Lian and other big name brand case manufacturers like Cooler Master, you'll get really nice assorted screws that are labeled and in a reusable enclosure. And it's just, you're getting more for your money, and that's why you're paying more. It's not like you're getting ripped off that, oh, they're selling me a $150 case when I could buy an identical case for $100. They're not identical. They're not identical in build quality. They're not identical in expandability. They're not identical in ease of use and cable management and stuff like that. They definitely are. If you don't believe me, well, just go back and watch some of our videos and listen to me curse and get frustrated because I knew better and did it anyway. Now, if it's a project for you and you enjoy puzzles and you don't mind spending 3 days on your cable management, have fun. But for the rest of us trying to stay in business, I'd much rather make it easy, because the easier it is to build, then the easier it'll be to service and upgrade later. So it's a well thought out investment to spend a few extra dollars on quality components in this industry. Unless you're planning to replace it and let it be somebody else's problem in a couple years. If you're planning to keep it, I'm telling you, the only person you're hurting is your future self. Let's take a look here and see what everybody is saying. Oh, Peter's telling Douglas how you can send an Amazon gift card. Thank you, Peter. Peter's an expert at that. Very generous member here, if not the most generous member here. Shop Persian Rugs renews membership, says, I lost my dream job, so I've been flipping used computers as a hobby lately, but my wife might kick me out if I don't pull myself out of this midlife crisis. Watching you always cheers me up. Hey, if you can sell computers and enjoy doing it and earn a living, all the power to you. John Williams wants to know if I've ever experienced an all-in-one cooler that sprung a leak and shorted out the motherboard. No, because the liquid that's in a liquid cooler is non-conductive, so it should not short out a motherboard. All-in-one coolers are built at the factory, and any factory that would put any conductive liquid into a computer cooler would be one that maybe you got from AliExpress or something. There's no major name brand that's ever done that. It can leak, but if it leaks, it's just a mess. It won't actually hurt anything. But when you're sourcing your cooler from some unconfirmed, source, anything's possible. Now, I have never seen a liquid cooler leak, I don't think. Not an all-in-one cooler. The ones that typically leak are the ones that people build themselves, because they have a lot more fittings, and every fitting is a potential leak point. So where the reservoir is, there's fittings. Where the pump is, there's fittings. Where every hose connects to another hose, there's fittings. So, your opportunity for leaks is multifold. With an all-in-one cooler, what we typically see is the liquid gets gummed up on the inside and it no longer flows properly, or the pump fails and the liquid is fine, but it can't flow because the pump is dead. That's probably the most common occurrence. And then secondly, there's a residue that gets left behind over time that more or less clogs the arteries of the radiator and the pump of the heat spreader of the pump, which reduces its efficacy so much so over time that it basically, even though the fluid's moving, it's like a restricted artery. You're not getting much fluid actually moving through. It's all sort of narrowed down and clogged up, and then they have to get replaced. But leaks, no, I can't say I've ever seen an all-in-one ever leak. Never. But an open loop, or what we call a custom build cooler, those leak all the time. That's just user error. Lou Greeny says, from what I can tell, the front panel isn't removable. I think it is, but I could be wrong. Find me in Hawaii with a $4.99 super chat. Thank you for that, Ken. Andy Archer said it should be held in with short clips, so pulling back at the top edge to release that edge should allow you to release the rest of the clip. Yeah, I don't know if you're referring to the glass or the back panel or anything. I'm not worried about it. I'll figure it out. Again, telling me who the murderer was in the murder mystery movie, you're not helping me. You're upsetting me. So please don't give away the secrets. This is what I enjoy doing. And the idea is that I'm sharing that experience with you. Now, of course, if I reach a point where I'm like, you know what, does anybody know how to do this? Well, that's your opening for stepping in. But otherwise, giving away all the secrets is really spoiling the fun for me. I'd appreciate if we didn't do that. Douglas wants me to check email. We could do that real quick. Sure. Give me a second to think about this for a minute. I'm sure it's incredibly simple. Everything so far has been. It's just wrapping my mind around the concept of it, right? What the engineers were thinking. Because likely how one piece comes off is related to how the rest of the system comes apart. That's why I pointed out these screws were a bit different than everything else on the build that doesn't flow with what we've gotten used to so far. But maybe there's more of this to come. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Let's see, what do we have in our email? So I can find my glasses. Where's my email? Oh, I see. Douglas Burchell sends a $100 Amazon gift card. Right on. He says, I hope you enjoy the Amazon gift card. I hope this helps the channel somehow. Well, none of these parts were given to us by any company. We paid for all these parts. All the tools I used and continue to use, the Lazy Susan, the keyboards, all because of your contribution. So, you know, the Black Friday deal's coming up. So we're sort of trying to sit tight on the Amazon gift card money and make it go further. If we see something on sale, that will be a future video content for us. Speaking of which, Frankie B also sent an Amazon gift card. He goes, here's a little something to help you for no commercials. Well, Frankie B is the commercial because when we go to sponsors, the reason we do that is to bring the income in so we can make the content. When you guys can provide us a level of income that, I mean, typically when it comes to sponsors, you'll see some content creators have some pretty fancy houses and cars. But when it comes to relying on user contributions, as long as we have enough to make ends meet that we can keep it rolling, that's all we need. We're not looking to buy a Ferrari or a Porsche or a Tesla. We just want to keep putting it all back into the channel and making it happen. And folks like Frankie B and Buster, of course, Douglas Burchell, you guys all added up together, some of you individually, make this content possible that would otherwise require me to get a sponsorship and go do what all those other big tech YouTubers are doing. They've already done it, so what do I need to do that for? Mark Gaines also sends an Amazon gift card, $25. That comes from Northern Ireland. And, of course, Buster's in Scotland. Frankie B is in New York. And Douglas Burchell, I think he's in Ohio. In Ohio. But thank you guys so much for the love and the support. And I think that catches us up. Do remind me to check it again, because I'll get so involved in this I'll forget. Thank you again, each and every one of you, and of course to all the members, and for everybody joining us in chat. If you are watching this video but you're not in our chat room, we're live right now. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Phoenix, 1 p.m. in California, and 4 p.m. in New York. So depending on where you're watching us in the US, if it's during this time period, you're watching live, and we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Please pop in and say hello. The chat is open to everybody. Now, just taking one more look at this, I can see this glass does come off. I can see where the connector is. So that certainly happens. It looks like it either has to slide up or that another piece has to come off first for the glass to be freed. That's what it appears. We're going to find out. But more importantly, I think before that front glass can come off, if that's possible, this rear panel has to come off. And as I mentioned, usually there's pull tabs, something that indicates a direction, such as I already showed with the glass with the little tab that stuck out. But without that, I don't know if this pulls away. Oh, well, I guess I just answered my own question. It pulls away slightly, and then typically you lift up on it. Perfect. So we'll set this down here. Again, we don't want to bend it or bump into it. And now we can see screws on this piece that I believe are holding the front glass in. And these look like the same little screws that were across the top, unless when I put on my glasses they turn into rivets. Let's find out. I mean, I'm digging this so far. I am really enjoying the thoughtfulness of this build quality and cable management consideration and overall looks without being, massive, giant case. So let's take out that little screw right there. Yeah, that's the same exact screw they used up here on the panel we removed. 1, 2, and 3 right here. And now, let's see. Oh, that just slides off this way. Ooh, look at that. You see, after 30 years of experience, some things still pretty much hold true. Regardless of how new something is, it's still the same old thing. And it's just a matter of deciphering sometimes the orientation of like a puzzle. You might have the right puzzle piece, but you've got it turned wrong. So you're like this close from getting it to fit. Now I bet you this glass should slide out of here. Well, you should have bet me. What's happened is we have a metal frame around the edge of the glass. And once again, it's got those same tiny screws. So they really weren't kidding around. When they secured the glass to this, there are 4 screws holding this piece of glass in, on top of the 2 screws that we removed from the bottom. And then when you add on the side and you add on the top, that is a very solid structure. It will not accidentally fall off. We've seen some cases where you just put your hand on the front bezel or the front glass and it just comes off accidentally. This is dangerous. If you ever have to pick the computer up and carry it somewhere, you could accidentally, on those kind of cases, knock the glass loose, have it hit the floor and shatter, or even just cracking it because it's tempered glass. Once it's cracked, whether or not you notice the crack, it becomes extraordinarily volatile. And it could just, from a temperature change, just shatter unexpectedly. So having this secured this strong, this is quality. Now, the glass comes out. And look at how easy this is going to be to work on. I would say this reminds me of that Thermaltake T100, that mini ITX build, which was the biggest mini ITX case I've ever seen. But it opened up like this and made working on mini ITX the easiest ever. Usually Mini ITX deals with a Mini ITX case where everything is really tiny and cramped and it's hard to get your hands into all these small places, but then you end up with a computer that's really tiny. With the Tower T100 from Thermaltake, it opened up like this and we were able to get our hands into everything just like it was a normal motherboard. But when we're done, we have a case 3 times bigger than a smaller Mini ITX case that would have worked. But that also gives us better cooling options, where with Mini ITX cases, oftentimes you've got to take into consideration the length of the video card as well as the thickness of your cooler, or the cases are so small they won't fit. So pros and cons each way you look at it. But as a builder, having this wide open, oh, that makes me so happy. Let me just set this piece of glass down. Once again, we don't want to lose these screws. We know we have 4 for the glass and 3 for the plastic front, and they all appear to be exactly the same thread, so we don't have to separate them out. They're all the same screw. We just don't want to lose any of them. And in fact, these can go with those 2 thumb screws over there, just for now. Looking around the back, you'll also notice, you know, this deep space here. We can put our radiator here and our fans on the other side. That's beautiful. We can run the pump hoses and pump behind this. Oh, yeah, behind this. Look at that. That's magnetized. And there are all of our screws and mounting hardware for hard drives, solid state drives, motherboard, whatever we're putting in here. All the screws are in this nice little divided plastic piece, which is all written in Chinese, but we've got some zip ties in there, and it's taped closed, so nothing's going to fall out of there during shipping and rattle around and scratch up the glass in the case. Now, if you asked me, based on the other case that we bought, that Black Widow case, I think was $75. This case is $45 more. Would I pay $45 more to have a case that has cable management consideration, looks a lot better, built of better materials, has all the screws sorted? Yes, I would. How much more would I pay? I'd pay twice as much. I would have paid, if I paid $75 for that Black Widow case, this at $199 is still a good value when you take into that consideration just how much extra you're getting for $45. This becomes a bargain all day long, and the $75 case is the one that's ripping you off. You just got to look at it for what it really is. At least that's my opinion. That and $3 will get you a cup of coffee. All right, so we can get these wire ties out of here. And you'll find I do save these wire ties because they can come in handy when I'm working on things and I need to temporarily get some wires out of my way. And then I can cut these to what I need, finish my job, and then throw them out, because at that point I've cut them and they're too short to fit anywhere else. So I just throw them in the drawer as almost like helping hands, you know, just to keep them. I never leave wire ties in permanently when you're done with your computer. Look at how great the cable management is. We've got our 2 3.5-inch drive bays here. It looks like we can mount 2.5-inch drives on this piece here. Wow. Wow. I'll bet you this piece comes out too. I bet you we can take this out and mount our radiator in it without having to be in the case. You see, when something moves like that, that suggests to me it's not riveted. There is likely a screw or maybe a lift. Yeah, I see little cutouts here and here. Aha! There is a thumb screw right there. Who needs documentation? Now this thumb screw isn't what I thought it was for. This is for a GPU support bracket. So if you put a big heavy graphics card in here, you can adjust this so that your graphics card stays level. You could even get a little bubble level if you want to be precise about it. And this will prevent your GPU from warping over time. That's part of the case, and if you don't want it, you can remove it. I don't think it's going to hurt anything to leave it in there. We also have another thumb screw. This one's way up here at the top. I'm just now noticing everything that's been in front of my face this whole time. If I take that thumb screw out, then I think maybe this piece, oh, look at that. This is going to make installing our radiator so much easier. Wow. Can I like this any? Who of you recommended this case to me? And why didn't I listen to you earlier? This is fantastic. Let's see, what else? What else can I take apart? Some of these, the motherboard trays can come out, although even if this did, I don't know why we'd want to. But sometimes you can take the motherboard trays out. Now, back in the day, that was standard. You'd always take the motherboard tray out, mount your board, and then put the whole thing in. Nowadays, it's pretty rare to see it, but I was just checking because I kind of missed those days. And again, if we look around the back here one more time, if we open this up, look at all the room we have for cable management. Look at this little stand we have right here with a little, it's got a little rubbery piece. These little details. That's so the fan in your power supply, as it's spinning, it's creating a very slight vibration. Your power supply is not rubberized, it's metal. And when you put that metal on metal, depending on the power supply and how fast your fan is spinning, it can create a buzzing sound throughout your case. So by having this rubberized right here, adding that little piece of rubber is amazingly thoughtful for a nice, peaceful, quiet experience. Not every case manufacturer will do that. Now, not every power supply will make a buzzing sound because of the case either. But there's a number of variables here that you don't even have to worry about because it's taken care of regardless. Either way, you're fine. So we're going to need this shortly when we go to mount our radiator, our Hydroshift 360. I'm just going to set it here, again, with such a small bench to work on. In the little container here, we've got these little plastic dividers. So if you want to change the layout of the little sections, that's what these are for. So you can use this for something else later. You have a couple spare plastic door clips. We've got some rubberized grommets. These are typically used when mounting 3.5-inch drives, something that has a motor that could vibrate. Anytime you see a rubberized grommet, that's typically meaning something motorized is going to be potentially vibrating and making sound. So I would guess that's for mechanical drives. We don't have the screws separated. They are all in one Ziploc bag. That's a little disappointing. I thought they would be sectioned off for us, but apparently we can do that ourselves, seems to be the attitude from Lian Lee. So if we remove our white, we get 3 whole cable ties. And if we take these little plastic dividers and we place them with the ridges facing up, we can put some here, some here. I'm hoping you guys can see what I'm doing here. I mean, I kind of wish this was done at the factory, but whatever. Put one there. Get it in the slot. There we go. They don't work very well if you've only got one side in the slot. And this keeps my OCD happy because now I can separate these screws myself into 5 different sections. So if I open this up, oh, I've already dropped one. These screws that have shoulders on them, these go with those rubber grommets, and those are typically, once again, used for hard drives. They give you a lot of these little tiny or small screws that I removed from the top and the back. Those are pretty important in this build. They use a lot of them, and that's one of them just fell on the floor. But I'm going to go ahead and separate these out because in the future when I need a screw, digging through a bag and then having to spill the bag out like this usually results in them falling on the floor. This keeps everything neat and organized. We're not even going to use any of these shoulder screws because we're not going to put any mechanical drives in this. But if you wanted to, you're definitely going to want to know where these are. So keeping it organized is, I just wish it was done at the factory. This is one of those little 5mm socket adapters to go to a Phillips screwdriver. Let's put that anywhere, I suppose. There's another little tiny one of those screws right there. And then the one that fell on the floor. One easy way I find for dropping screws, for finding screws that I've dropped on the floor, is to walk around barefoot. It'll almost instantly find it as it jabs you in the heel or in the most sensitive part of your foot. So I'll get that later. Now, what's interesting to me is this is a reclosable, resealable Ziploc, and inside of it is a non-reclosable bag. Once again, I typically see this on cheaper manufacturers. As far as complaints go, this is pretty minor, right? I mean, it's not a big deal. Now, in this bag, we've got a variety of other screws that include a lot of fan screws. Now, we're going to be needing, and you know what? These are real chunky for fan screws. Usually, all cases use the same fan screws. These are really fancy, though. You know what? Yeah, let's just go ahead and put those there. It doesn't really matter which of these little containers I use, as long as I'm consistent and not mix them up. That is okay, so this case has room for a lot of fans. Every fan can take 4 screws, right? So you could multiply the number of fans times the number 4 to know how many maximum screws you would need for any particular case you're buying. Usually the fans come with the screws, but what happens if the fan screws are a different color than the case? In that situation, using the case screws would typically be color matched, even though they may be the same screw at the end of the day. We have a couple extra standoffs for the motherboard. I'm just going to place them over here for right now because I don't know if we need them. And we have these shoulder-based screws, which look very similar to the other ones, but they have a finer thread. That suggests to me they're used for 2.5-inch mechanical drives or 2.5-inch SATA SSDs. SATA SSDs don't have any vibration. It wouldn't need that screw, but they're not going to come up with a different mounting mechanism depending on if it's mechanical or not. Therefore, any 2.5-inch drive would use the smaller grommet, and the 3.5-inch drive would use the smaller screw would be on the 2.5-inch drive, and the bigger shouldered screw would be on the 3.5-inch drives for that reason. It's another fan screw, shoulder, shoulder, shoulder. All of these shoulder screws in the separate bag are all the same, and that's why they were separated out into different, one was on the outside of the bag. One was inside of the Ziploc, the other was inside of the sealed bag inside of the Ziploc to keep them from being confused. So long as we take a moment now to organize them, it shouldn't create any confusion in the future. There's another motherboard standoff. There's another little shoulder screw. And the rest of what we have here, these look like your standard fine-threaded, typically used on optical drives, solid-state drives. Oops, I just put that one in the wrong container. There's another shoulder screw, there's a little one. We also have some case screws. Usually you're going to get 4 of these. They are typically used to mount your power supply. Oftentimes when you buy a power supply, it will also come with screws. The screws should match the color of the power supply. A black power supply should come with black screws, but they don't always. What if we bought a black power supply to put in here? Would we want to use the black screws that come with the power supply or the silver screws that come with the case? Because it's white, silver just tends to look better and be the choice most builders will make, but it's entirely up to you. There's no wrong answer. It's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. We have another one of these little tiny, this one's a little different. I wonder what that's for. There's the other 2 for the power supply. Like I said, you should end up with extra power supply screws. If you're using a new power supply, it'll come with its own screws. And then typically a case will also include power supply screws. Like the power supply manufacturers and case manufacturers have not agreed on who should supply the screws. And there's one more shoulder screw there. And that accounts for everything but this one oddball. What is that for? That is bigger. I don't know how well you can see that, but the little screws that we're using the abundance of are half that size of what this, there's only one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that in its own little area here, so it's different. And now we have a nice organized tray of screws that can stay with this case along with the extra panels, because you're going to want these screws and possibly even these clips that go up in here. Should, because they're plastic, they can crack and break, especially if you're rough with them or if the case gets really old and the plastic gets brittle over time. Once again, when you buy these cheap no-name brand cases, yeah, I suppose you get a good price on them, but you don't get any of this thoughtfulness for future needs. They just want you to buy another case. This case is designed where you don't have to buy another case for any fitment issues. The only reason you'd want to replace this case in the future would likely be because it's out of fashion, not because of any functionality limitation. Some people have to have something new all the time, and some people buy it once and live with it for as long as possible. You want to buy a cheap case? I hope you're not planning to live with it very long. That's all. Tom Jackson was $7.77. Says, here's my late fee. Thank you, Tom. Goldman 2000 said it's 4 degrees Celsius here in the Netherlands. Barry Klein said, you know, I really need to stop watching Carrie's videos because every time I do, I find myself reaching for my credit card and sailing over to Amazon to buy something he's showing. He's the pitchman from the Twilight Zone, episode number 2. That's very specific. You know, if you wait, there's going to be sales. I don't know what's going on sale, but you might be able to pick up anything that you see on this bench far cheaper than what I paid. Maybe. Or it could sell out and you miss out entirely. Anyway, you do you. But wait till you see what it looks like when it's done. Steve McCure says that motherboard is going to look fantastic in this case. Yeah, that's why we switched the case out, and that's why we changed our original concept for this build. It changed 180 degrees from what we were just going to build something kind of good enough, and now we're building a flagship. And we also spent about $550 more to get this case and that cooler alone were almost $500 just for the 2 items, like $120 for the case, $270 on the cooler. And then when you add in the $100 fans times 2, and those were a little bit cheaper. I saved about $20 to $25 per box because they were returned, but bought them from Amazon Warehouse. So if there's any issues, I can return them without any hassle from Amazon. I don't buy used items from unknown third-party sellers unless I'm really confident, you know, that seller has really good feedback and the seller says they accept returns. I also know I'm not going to get that second day shipping or next day shipping. Sometimes with third-party sellers, you have to wait a week or longer to get what you're ordering, depending on, like when I ordered those Nook 5s, those came from New Hampshire to Phoenix. They took about 10 days. So I calculate that all into the price I'm saving if everything works. And there was, you know, maybe a missing screw on one of them. It's a little minor stuff. And if you're okay with that, you know, go ahead and roll the dice. You don't like rolling the dice, always buy new, and it's worth paying a little extra for the peace of mind if that matters that much to you. Okay, so I'm running quickly out of room here. What I'm curious about now that we've got this all apart, I'll put these down here. If I lay this flat, now we typically have 3 screws across each end, 3 screws vertically across the middle, across the back, and across the front. And if we lay this in here, if this is typical of most major name main brand case manufacturers, the pre-applied standoff should already be in the proper standard ATX positions. Now, as I mentioned, I don't have any plan on adding a graphics card to this, but this has been changing so rapidly. I don't think I'm going to remove this GPU support bar, because I think we might end up using it. Unless it's in the way of something, I'm going to leave it, because I don't think it's ugly. I don't think it draws the eye. I could change my mind though, but for right now I'm going to leave it in. And I want to do what I call a dry fit. And I just simply want to set the board in here and see how that's going to fit. Look at how struggle-free that was. Look how the I/O shield's already built onto the board, how it fits and matches perfectly with the color. You would think this was factory built from, you know, Dell or somebody. And yeah, it does cost a little bit more, but you're getting something that's modular. Anybody can work on it, and much faster than anything you're going to get for that price from Dell anyway. With that in, I think we can go ahead and secure the board. I'm not sure which screws these standoffs use. So what I will do is take one of the spare standoffs we have here, and with the motherboard off the box, I can place our screw box up here and just kind of feel like there's a lot of these small fine threaded screws, and I'm wondering if these might be what's used for holding the motherboard down. I know the fan screws aren't used for the motherboard, and I know those shouldered screws are only used for storage devices. So that only leaves us with either the smaller shallow screws, which I doubt. But let's see. Gotta make sure it tightens. Oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. That also means they've given us 3 extra standoffs above and beyond. Remember, on the cheaper case, they only gave us 9 total, and our board had 10 holes. Now this board, is this the one that had 10 holes? No. 1, 2, 3. If there's a 10th hole, oh, wait a minute. It does. I left the plastic standoff in it. But again, because we have bought a higher quality board, we can put one of these extra standoffs in that 10th hole. And while it's not common, it is AATX standard. So the fact that the other case did not, trying to remember, the other case gave us the hole, but they didn't give us any extra standoffs. We had a total of 9 and we needed 10. And not all standoffs are the same height or have the same thread. So taking a standoff from one case and putting it into another doesn't automatically mean it's going to fit. I think a lot of people misunderstand the lack of standards in this regard. The height that the motherboard has to come up to align with these slots can be very different from one case to a different case, even from the same manufacturer. There is no standard. There's a size that's more common with regards to the thread type and the height of the standoff, but it's a choice of each case manufacturer. There's no rule that says they have to do it a certain size. And one standoff from one case might require a small thin thread screw, and another standoff, even if it's the same height and is threaded the same into the motherboard tray, may require a coarse threaded screw on the inside of it to secure your board down to. And so you're going to be left with what looks like a very unprofessional build to anybody who's got an eye for detail and wonders why you've got 3 different types of screws holding your board down. That's just hokey. People go, well, it works. I go, yeah, okay, it works, but you know, duct taping your car door closed is also a bit hacky. It might be good enough for you, but if you're running a dealership, you probably won't be in business very long. So somewhere in here, I have some needle nose pliers, and I'm going to pop that little plastic standoff off of there since we properly don't need it. You shouldn't need these on modern builds unless you have an older case or you just cheaped out on your case, right? You're just going to pay other ways. That's all I'm trying to, you're paying one way or the other. So I'm just saying, buy once, cry once, get it done, and you'll have a much better overall experience, in my opinion. And it brings the fun back to this, right? Because you'll feel like, hey, I'm making good progress here. I'm not struggling, you know. At the same time, there is a little bit of still figuring it out that adds to the fun of, you know, if you're stuck on a video game level and no matter what you do, you can't get past it, you reach a point of frustration where you want to throw the thing out the window. So say it happens on PC building, and especially if you're a first-time builder or you don't have a lot of experience building, why would you do that to yourself to make, you know, to buy a bunch of cheap or used returned parts that make the experience frustrating, discouraging, take longer, and remove the fun. That's all I'm saying. Building like this today, this is a real pleasure for me. I have been so looking forward after the last couple cases that we worked on. I'm just like so done with these cheap, discounted, no-name brand cases. And by the way, when a case manufacturer comes out with a cheap case, somebody you trusted and you thought made good cases, like, I don't know, Fractal Design. I don't trust anything now from Fractal Design. How do I know? Am I getting one of the good ones? Maybe, maybe not. So with Lian Li, I know all the cases are built well. Corsair, Cooler Master, NZXT, Fantex. I know whatever I'm paying for it, it's worth it. And sometimes they're actually cheaper than the crappy cases. I've seen some crappy cases on Amazon for $600. Now, why anybody would spend $600 suggests to me that they really don't understand what they're buying. Or they're so enthralled with the aesthetic of it, they don't really care how it's made. Maybe they want something different. Well, it's different, all right. You're going to understand why nobody else is using it once you get your hands on it and realize all of the shortcomings it has. And then when you find out it's probably using about $45 worth of parts, and you paid $600 for it, if you don't feel like a sucker at that point, I don't know what to tell you, man. You'll be their favorite customer from that point forward, that's for sure. You might as well just go out to the machine shop and take an old refrigerator and start cutting the metal and making your own at that point. Now, the reason I left the heatsink on is so I can hold onto something that's grounded, where I don't have to worry about anti-static discharge. I don't have to wear an anti-static strap. Once the board is secured to the case, which is also grounded, then I can take the heatsink off of it, and we can start, you know, putting in fans and liquid cooler and such. Essentially, just to give you an early peek at what we've done here, if I put this back on its feet, now remember that cooler, we're going to take this cooler off. So this whole black section won't be in here. It's all going to be white. And even though these are RGB fans, one of the RGB colors is simply white. So this can look like an angel when it's all done, just having a nice bright white halo around it. But it'll be a devil underneath the heatsink. So. All right, let's get that heatsink off of here. Now, if this is the first part of this video you've watched, please be aware that we did a part 1 where we prepped the motherboard. That's a critical piece of this build. You can skip part 2 because that's just me cursing at a poor case choice. Unless you want to understand in depth why these cheap cases should not be purchased, then go watch part 2. Otherwise, you can skip part 2. This is our new part 2. Now, as you can see, we've got some thermal compound to clean off. And you can see that socket frame now that we unnecessarily put on. And even though the socket frame is black, and you can buy the socket frames in other colors, you're going to cover it up with a heat pump or a heat sink anyway. So they are completely pointless. As I mentioned, I already had it in inventory for testing, and I had purchased about 4 or 5 of them. They were cheap. But they're entirely unnecessary, and they're not even aesthetically anything because you're covering them up regardless. Let me grab a paper towel and wipe up the thermal compound because it gets pretty messy. And once it gets on stuff, it's really hard to remove it. I will eventually have Studio C organized where this stuff will be within reach. I've got so much going on, it's hard to do everything. all at once. Now this is just a preliminary wipe down, and just a paper towel is all that's needed. Otherwise you'll be wasting tons and tons of Q-tips. Once we get the bulk of it off, then we can clean it with Q-tips and rubbing alcohol. My main concern really is not polishing it at this point. It's just to get it, the bulk of it off of there. Yeah, I did put a lot on here. And when we put this on, we knew it was just going to be temporary, just to make sure the board and the RAM and the OS installed okay, and we can update the BIOS and do all that prior to putting it into the case. Now, normally, if I were building a computer in the shop for a customer, we don't do this. This would all go in the case and it would be fired up. You don't need to test it out of the box unless you bought something used or you bought it from a questionable source. The quality control on parts today is incredible. We very rarely ever get anything dead on arrival or requiring a return. We build a lot, and we used to get a lot more returns, 15, 20 years ago, but today you can just safely put the whole thing together. Like I said, if you're using anything used, different story, or parts that come from a questionable source is also a different story. Different rules apply then. But everything we're using in this build was all brand new out of the box. And the reason I build it outside of the case is for the educational content, so you can see how it's done. When you're building for yourself, you're taking unnecessary safety risks by leaving it out in the open like that, especially if you have like a cat or a dog that might jump on it or touch it. They are little walking electrostatic discharge machines. And you can protect yourself all you want, but if it's open to the environment like that, it's not good for the equipment and it's not safe. So the way I build on camera is not the way I build in real life, just so you know, unless I'm working with used parts, because then you never know what's going to happen. Let's take a look here in the chat room right quick and see what I've been missing in your conversations, if anybody's talking to me. Fernando wants to know, is a dry fit important? Well, for me it is. For me, I want to make sure that all the standoffs are in place. So if I went ahead and I had applied thermal compound on this, and I've got the heatsink attached to it, say to the liquid cooler, and then I realize I've got a standoff somewhere where there's no hole on the motherboard, that'll short out the whole build. The smoke can come out. Or in this example we just exhibited, we had a hole in the motherboard where there was not a matching standoff. Now that's not a deal breaker, but it also suggests to me as a system builder, if I see somebody who builds their own system and they don't take the time to do the cable management right, and they don't take the time to use all the screws or to use the right screw or to mix and match different screws, it tells me you don't care. You're a sloppy builder. If you're building for other people are hiring you because you have convinced them you know what you're doing. The question is, if another real working technician looked at your work, would they conclude you knew what you were doing? So I always build to the highest standard, the same way Dell or HP would do it. Those are also my competitors. Dell doesn't leave out any screws. Dell doesn't mix and match screws. No professional PC manufacturer does that, nor should I. So for that reason, when I dry fit a board, the reason I'm doing it is I want to make sure the case I'm using and the motherboard I'm using will all line up correctly with how the case arrived from the manufacturer and what mounting points the board has. If I were building a lot of these, if I had 10 identical systems to build, I'd really only have to dry fit one of them as long as I remembered this is where the standoffs need to go, or they don't need to move at all. They're all in the right place. I've never worked in this case before, and I have never used this motherboard before. And the build we did before this, I never used that combination of parts, that processor or that board, and that's a different series of mounting points. And then depending on if the motherboard's micro ATX, or if it's full ATX, and depending on the case, and whether or not the case comes with the standoffs pre-installed, not pre-installed, or they don't give you enough standoffs, which is what happened on the Black Widow build. So if it wasn't important, I wouldn't do it. If I'm showing you something on camera, the reason I'm showing it to you is there for an educational purpose, meaning if it wasn't important to you, we would not have done it on camera. So I hope that will answer any future questions if you see me do anything else that you think is unnecessary. If it wasn't necessary, I wouldn't have done it. Now, what's necessary for me and what's necessary for you may be two different. I'm held to a higher standard because I'm selling to customers. I'm also held to a higher standard because I know if I ever have to work on this system, I don't want to be mad at myself for taking shortcuts that I have to pay for later in more invested time and frustration. If I take the time to do it right now, anytime I have to work on it in the future, it'll be much easier and faster. And I will be so glad I did it right. Also, if I do it right, the odds of me needing to come back and work on it are less. There's that too. Mitchell Morrison's back home. He said he is looking for his next vacation to be Ireland and Scotland. Ooh, nice. I don't think he just got home from South America yesterday and he's already planning his next trip. What a life. I want to be Mitch Morrison for a day. Well, I guess I need more than a day. That's just travel time. Give me like a week. Hope you're safe and sound, Mitch. I'm assuming he is. We certainly appreciate Mitch sharing his videos with us while he was traveling with Machu Picchu and Bogota and Rio de Janeiro. Sugarloaf Mountain. Moonraker. Remember Moonraker? James Bond? All right. Anyway, what should I do now? Fans? I could do fans. We have 3 reverse turning fans. As I already explained, the RGB really only shines out one side. So if we just put ordinary fans on the bottom, they're blowing the air in the wrong direction. We need reverse blade fans. These fans are a complete waste of money unless you have a graphics card that would benefit from their cooling. What they're really doing is they're being a big expensive vacuum cleaner, pulling everything off your floor, dust and dirt, and blowing it right into your machine. So logically and engineering-wise, this is a terrible location for your fans to be. However, it's going to look fantastic. So we're doing it purely for the aesthetic. Now these 2 boxes might look alike, but one of them says reverse blade fans, one of them doesn't, and one of them's $10 more than the other one. Other than that, they're the same, I think. I hope. Let's see. Lian Lee fan, reverse blade, right in red writing right there on the front of the box. Now, if somebody did return these, like I said, if they put the wrong fans in the box, I'm going to be upset. But this hopefully is all the right equipment. It's kind of hard to tell reverse blade fans by looking at them, but once you plug them in, you can feel which way the air is moving. I mean, clearly somebody's had this out of the bag. I mean, I don't know why they returned it. These look like genuine Lian Lee fans, but you notice there's no cables on these fans. Isn't that nice? Instead, they have connectors, and each fan connects to the next fan in a daisy chain, and then the last fan is the one that has the RGB cable and power cable, and it just passes it on down the chain. Why didn't they think of that from the get-go? It makes cabling so much easier and much cleaner looking when it's installed. Now these may have a model number on the fan itself to verify they're reverse blade fans, but yeah, this is what they look like. There's really nothing in the center there. All your logo is on the back. There goes a little cover. So that little cover is there to protect these pins. And it would typically go on the last fan, since there's not another fan to connect to at the end of the chain. This blocks it just for preventing any shorting and to keep it looking clean. And I just dropped that little piece of plastic here, right down here somewhere. It's not that small, shouldn't be this hard to find. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to bring the fan up and show you. Any of these fans could be the last fan in the chain. First fan in the chain gets the wires. Then the second fan in the chain will connect to the pins, and they'll lock together with a slot and groove. And then the third and final fan in the chain in the fan. Words are hard.
I love it.
You're gonna cover it up. Well, don't worry, we'll edit that out in post. Sure we will. We just cover that up somehow. Maybe I had it right the first time. You cover up the pins and slide that up, and that keeps those pins from grounding out against anything, and it keeps a nice clean look. And then this is the pad where the pins hit and make a connection for your power and RGB instead of cables. It's a nice clean look, and then you've got your RGB lights along the mirrored sides here. So overall, this is a really well thought out design. These fans do feel a little bit wider to me than a regular case fan. I'm not going to measure them, but after a while, if you've been handling parts as long as I have, make your own joke, these feel a little bit chunkier. Now, this may be an issue if you're mixing and matching different case manufacturers with different case fans. So if you tried to put a Lian Li fan into a non-Lian Li case, it's possible it won't fit because of its thickness, unless I'm just imagining that. And then you do have cables, of course, because they will need to have RGB and power. But instead of doing RGB and power to each one with its own cable, we're just got one cable that does all of them in the chain. And we don't have to stop at 3, but I don't know where you'd have a case where you'd be using much more than that anyway. And this is a much cleaner install. It looks like they give us an individual power and individual RGB for something. I'm not sure yet why that's separated. And then this is going to provide power, right? So you can plug your power supply, SATA power, into this, and then this goes on the end of the fans, and again, it's capped off, so it's a nice clean look. The cable matches the color. Everything should blend in really nicely. And finally, we have some documentation. We have, oh, this must have been the plastic that was on the fans during shipping. You know, you take the plastic off. Yeah, it looks like somebody just peeled the plastic off. Instead of throwing it away, they put it back in the box. Hey, when you're returning something, you really should give back everything you got, everything you purchased. There are 4 fan screws in each bag. They are black for some reason instead of white or silver. This is what I was talking about. You might want to use the fan screws that come with your case if you care. Now, nobody's going to see these screws, regardless of what color they are, because of the direction they're going to face. I'll show you. And then finally, in this box right here, we have something, I don't know what. What is this? A Lian Li fan controller. Now, it's quite possible, one of the reasons these fans are $100 for 3 is we're getting 2 controllers, plus we're getting a controller on the Hydroshift. It may be we only need 1 of these controllers. We might have been able to do some research and save some money. Maybe not. I guess we'll find out. But oh, wait a minute, there's a 4th bag of fan screws? Oh, maybe 4 to hold the controller on somewhere? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. So the only other reason this might need to be returned would be if there's something physically wrong with these fans. Seems highly unlikely with today's manufacturing standards that we would have a fan kit being returned because of a noisy or non-working fan. Possible though. When it comes to hooking these fans up, it really shouldn't matter which one you want to start with. They should all be the same. And what we want to do is normally there should be the little plastic cover on both sides. So if one of these is missing the plastic cover, that makes sense because with at least one of them, you'd have to remove it to connect it to another. So I can see like there are no plastic covers on this one, and it may be the person who had it took them off and didn't return them. But this will be the middle one anyway, because that's clearly what it has to be without the little plastic covers. And so we just line up the pins and the pad and the notches on the fan. If I bring this up, go in almost like a picture frame kind of wall hook where you've got those notches and you've got the nubs. The nubs go in the notches and slide together. I think it goes like that. Slide them and it locks together. And we need 2 of these that are going to go back at the back of the case, but we want regular spinning, not reverse blade. Reverse blade are going to go on the bottom, so we're going to add the 3rd one. Now, I don't know if they ship that way, but this fan has the covers on both sides. So depending on, if we want this to be the front or the back, the mirrored side will be facing the motherboard and the edge of the glass. We wouldn't put it in sideways. That wouldn't make any sense. And then, regardless of which side we want, if we want to go to this side or that side, one's going to be a pad, one's going to be a pin. So if I just take off one of these covers, just slide it back and remove that, you'll see that's a pad. So we'll go to where the pins are. The pins are going to be on this side. So we'll take that one off, slide it forward, or backwards rather. You slide that backwards, right? Align the pad and the pin and the notches with the grooves, and then slide it forward. Now they're all wired up. Now we just need the master wire coming in, which is, you notice there's a cover on this side. This will be pins. And there's a cover missing on this side. This will be the pad. If I wanted to, I could put this cover back on. It just means I'm going to have to take it right back off again. And I would think if this was purchased new, I would think that every fan had these little covers and that we would have extra covers left over. But that's the whole fan assembly, and that just gets secured right down here. It's super easy. Well, it's upside down. You want the support beams to be out of vision. So we're going to put those facing down. The screws that go in are also coming in from the bottom, so you wouldn't tell what color the screws were anyway. The only thing we need to know is which direction are we going to run our cables. Since we already know we have to provide these cables, or we have to provide these fans with a power cable and an RGB cable, the question becomes which one do we use? It appears that you don't necessarily need to use all of these. This one looks like it goes into a fan controller. This one looks like it goes to another set of fans. And this one looks like you can just power it with your power supply, which might actually end up going on the controller. I don't know, I haven't read the directions, but it seems to me, just logically, that this weird funky 6-pin connector is going to go into the fan controller. And the fan controller is going to provide all of the RGB and power to all 3 fans, all through this one cable. So do we want the cable to come out of this side, or do we want the cable to come out of this side? I think that answer is pretty clear, knowing we're going to have a big piece of glass here. We're going to have 3 more fans right up here on our radiator, like so. And then we'll have 2 more fans just like this right here on the back. So we are going to want our cable as hidden as possible towards the back. But remember, there's pins on one side, pad on the other side. And that's going to determine if I put the fans in this way or this way, but definitely never would I flip it upside down. You should not see the fan supports. That would take away our RGB look, and it would also, on a reverse blade fan, make it a normal blade fan, blowing the air out of the case instead of bringing it in. Yeah, normally they would be, in this orientation, a regular case fan would be blowing the air out. With reverse blade fans, they're sucking air in. So we want the airflow to go up and out the top. Because we have a glass panel here and a glass panel here, all our airflow is going to be right through our radiator here, and this is going to be our input airflow. And then, of course, we'll have an exhaust airflow here as well. So it looks like this is the pad, right? And one side or the other, since I've covered them up, I don't know which side's which now. This side is pins. It looks like, here's what's interesting, this has both pins and pad on the other side. So it doesn't look like it matters. Like you could do it either way, apparently. So now, here's the question. If I turn this the other, when I turn this way towards me, the connector's going to be closer to the glass. Once again, we're thinking about things that aren't technical. Now we're thinking about things that are more attractive, which is weird because you've seen computer technicians, right? Anyway, we're going to move that aside. I cracked myself up. We'll move that one aside. Now that's got the pad, and this looks like it'll attach to either pin or pad, but when I put it into the case this way, now this wire is closer to the motherboard, which would be more easily hidden. And that would have to go on, just place it into the holes and then slide it up or down. One direction or the other should do it. Yeah, it goes down. Bingo. Now, when it comes to attaching these fans to the bottom of the case, Lian Li's made this really simple because I can tell just by looking at this securing panel, the bracket comes out. I just need my glasses. So one screw here, and again it's that small flat head coarse screw that we've again removed from the top. It's the most used screw on the case, and I really appreciate when manufacturers stick to one particular screw type, and then we don't have to worry about which one goes where. They have a couple things that are different, but overall there's an abundance of that type of screw. And then this whole bracket comes out. And then all we have to do is orient this onto the bracket and secure it down. Now, one of the things you're going to find on these fans, as I'm just now discovering, are all the holes, all the mounting holes are covered. And it appears that the centers pop out to reveal the mounting holes underneath. So I'm guessing, again, I'm not looking at any instructions, but I'm guessing we need something small to pop these little plastic covers out. Oh, okay. So the idea behind this is that in certain mounting situations, you might want to secure the fan and then cover the screw so you can't see it. Because we're coming up from underneath of the fan, these are going to come off. They will never be placed back on because this would just, well, there'd be no way to put them back on, quite frankly. So we're going to go ahead and just remove all of these from this side of the fan. But it's, again, very thoughtful that they did that because it's quite possible you've got a design or a case layout or configuration where you're going to have these fans in an orientation where these holes would be visible and unsightly. We couldn't have that. And then you could just put these little plastic covers over them. But for the way we're mounting this, these plastic covers will come off and they will not go back on. It is a bit overkill to have to put in 12 screws for these 3 fans, but it doesn't hurt anything, so why not? So my thought is if we keep the cable over here towards the back we're going to be better able to hide that and run it back behind the board so that you won't see any cables. Without a Project Zero build, you know, you are going to see some cables, but this almost negates the whole idea behind Project Zero because everything's going to be really well hidden. Obviously, these cables down here at the bottom of the board are exposed, but they're going to be just barely exposed as you're going to run them from behind and then up through the bottom and then connect them as so. So you'll barely see anything at all. And with this sitting right in front of them, in fact, this will probably impede our ability to get to those cables. We may not want to put this back on just yet, but we can at least secure the fans to the frame and get that done. Now, the other thing I'm noticing is the amount of depth you need on these fan screws. They're pretty well recessed in there because of the covers. In order for the covers to fit flush, the screw has to sit deeper. That means you're going to need longer than normal fan screws. We may not be able to use these fan screws that came with the case, even if we wanted to. But I'm curious, will it reach? Yeah, it looks like it'll more than reach. So, silver or black, I suppose it doesn't matter. I'm going to save the silver ones for where they're visible. Like I said, the black ones, we're never going to see them. And we have an extra set for some reason. And again, maybe they have something to do with the fan controller. I don't know. Okay, questions, comments, insults, criticisms. Now this will slide back and forth on this tray, so I don't want to tighten this down until I figure out how I want to center these. For most people, when you show them your computer, they're not going to say, oh, those are a little off center. This is really just taking advantage of the madness that most of us PC builders who pay attention to detail can be driven crazy by trying to perfect something that's never going to be perfect. It'll never be perfectly aligned. It's just to your own personal tastes. Make life a lot easier if they took that choice away from me, right? Just give me some solid, straight holes without the slot, and then it goes where it goes. But no, Lian Li wants to make sure you're in control at all times. If there's one thing a PC builder likes more than anything, it's control. So being able to slide that back and forth a good solid 2 inches means that we can center these how we want them. The filter extends that extra 2 inches regardless, so you're good no matter how you do it. You can't do it wrong. That's why I'm keeping the screws loose, so I can continue to move them back and forth, the fans back and forth. And I just don't know where they're going to go yet until I set it down and look at it. Now, obviously, we're not going to get this done today because we're already at our 2-hour mark. And we still have 2 more fans. We have a liquid cooler to install. And the problem with me stopping the video is my ability to remember where all of these screws I left out go diminishes the longer in between filming. So if something comes up where I can't film tomorrow, what I end up having to do is watch my own video back to figure out where did I get this screw from. And this is very common when I'm working with unfamiliar parts. Now, if you see me working on a Corsair 200R, you know, on a standard ATX motherboard, I could do that blindfolded. But don't expect too much of yourself if you're working with new parts. Don't beat yourself up over something that turns out to be obvious that just occurred to you. It's typical when working with new parts that you get familiar in that way. And it's those kind of incidents that make sure you don't forget for next time. Unless, of course, there's never a next time. It's a once-in-a-lifetime build. But anyway, maybe if you're helping somebody else or watching somebody else struggle. So I'm just getting all the screws started, and I'm going to keep them all loose. And then what I'm going to do next is place the fans down and move them left and right and see if it really makes any difference, or make up my mind on where I want them to be situated so that I can then tighten the screws down. And then the installation is simply plugging it into the fan controller, which is nothing, right? This is the time-consuming but still very easy part of the build process. And again, I'm using these purely for aesthetic purposes. We really don't need these fans at all for cooling. They're just costing more money and they're not hurting anything. It's the best thing I can say about them. And I'm hoping I didn't tighten them too tight. I don't think I did. That screw even looks crooked. Yeah, I over-tightened those. Should move. There we go. I don't want it too loose. I want to be able to lock it in so that when I pick it back up to tighten it down, I don't lose the position I selected. So when we set this back down, I just want to demonstrate to you that we can slide this more toward the back or more towards the front. So it's really a personal preference. I think having this little gap right here looks weird. For me, I want to slide it as far to the back as it can go. And what's happening is it's hitting the cable here. That's the other thing you need to keep in mind. When we run the cable through the back, say we run this through here, it goes right behind where the hard drive cages are. So it may even be in our best interest to remove those hard drive cages just so we can pull that cable through and straighten it out to see just how far back that way we can go. So when we install this, our cable management's going to look nice and neat and be more or less invisible. So if I remove this thumb screw, that hard drive cage comes out. And if I remove this thumb screw, you see how that comes out? There's 3 screws here. You leave these alone, those just pop through the little slots. You just set that down. And now I have super easy access to that screw or the wire I was struggling to fish through. It's just right here now. Super easy to see. And I can pull all the excess through here just to determine how far I can slide these fans to the edge of the case. But remember, and I just knocked a screw down there, that's why I shouldn't have put the screws there. We are going to take this right back out again to tighten these screws. I just want to figure out, once again, this is going to help me decide my placement. And if this wire is twisted or knotted up anywhere, it's going to affect our alignment for the fans. It's going to kind of misrepresent where it can go. So yeah, I can push it much, much further now to this edge. The only problem I see with it this far away is now instead of a gap being right here, it feels a little crowded. So I feel like it needs to be sort of, I don't know, maybe like that. But then it does leave a little bit of an awkward gap over on this side. However, the focal point is the motherboard and the 3 fans for the cooler. So as I'm looking at it, pushing it this way doesn't really make much sense to me unless I wanted all the fans in an alignment like that. But then it leaves a weird gap on this side. We can go kind of meet it in the middle. Maybe the middle's better, because if I take it too far to the back, like I said, it leaves a big gap right here. And if I take it too far the other side, it leaves a big gap right here. So I think maybe split the gap. Something like that. What do you think?
Middle. It has to be the middle. Yeah.
So that far, that's too far.
Yeah. A little bit more to the right.
That's too far.
Yep. No, well.
But if we go right about there, maybe?
Well, turn it directly towards me. Let me look at the board with the fan. Oh, yeah, that doesn't, it's not too, can you go
See if I go a little bit more this way.
Actually,
No? You think
No,
it needs to
actually,
go all the way up
the other
against?
way. There you go.
Remember, we got a big
That-
piece of
that's
glass,
right
so we're
there.
going to have a gap.
Right there, right there, right there. That,
You
right
think
there.
shoved all the way this way is better?
I do. Yeah. Yep. It makes more sense.
You think so?
I do.
And then we're going to have 3 fans here,
Yep.
and then just nothing right here.
I don't even think you'll really even see that empty space.
Well, yeah, this is a big piece of glass here and
Right.
here.
Right.
You're definitely going to see this. It's a big open gap.
But that's not the focus though. You're gonna right over.
I don't want it to become the focus.
Of course.
So that's why I think maybe just a little bit more like that.
That's okay. Yeah.
That also gives us a little bit of room to get in between here for any
Of
reason,
course. Yeah.
if we wanted to work on it.
Yeah. That's a great. Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
You agree?
I think so. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and take this back out, and we'll tighten the fans down in that position so we don't have to make this decision anymore.
All right.
Kind of feel like the whole piece should have moved instead of the fans, but I suppose they could have done it either way. We're going to wrap up today's video here, I think, because we still have the rear fans to put on. We have the liquid cooler to install, and we're easily in this another 2 to 3 hours to do that. The good news is it's a lot of fun. I'm not frustrated through any of this. It's just some decisions that have to be made that are purely, you know, opinion. There's no real fact over which position is better. It's purely an aesthetic decision. Like how you want to cut your hair is really up to you. You decide it. You're the one living with it. Whatever you think is best is the right way for you. Don't over tighten these screws on these fans when you have these rubber grommets. If you crush them, their anti-vibration qualities kind of go away, and you end up defeating the whole purpose of why they're there. So if you want your fans to run nice and quiet, don't over tighten them. I'm also noticing these screws like to go in sideways, and it's allowing me to wiggle the screw at quite an angle and tighten it. So when they tighten down on an angle, you'll see I'm unscrewing them, and I'm kind of leaning on what direction I want them to be straight up and down. Because even though you're not going to see these screws, I still want them to sit flush and not look like they were cross-threaded or put in by somebody who didn't care. See that one? Seems like it's angled. Usually with fans, you can't angle them this easily, but you also can't straighten them this easily either, which is kind of an interesting way that Lian Li's done this, and I'd have to look at the threads to see how they did that. They're actually quite difficult to get straight on. And it doesn't affect how well they're holding the fan in. It's really something I'm obsessing over as a perfectionist, because this is going to flip upside down where no one can see it anyway. But if we place this back in here like so, I want you to keep in mind that once we put this back in, if we put this in too early, like right now, for example, if I said, okay, let's put this in now, I will have to take it back out again in order for me likely to be able to reach all these connectors on the bottom of the board. So my debate is, will I remember where all the screws are? So if I just go ahead and put this back, these are 2 less screws that I got to worry about where they go or where they went. And it's no big deal for me to remove this tomorrow if need be, if I need to get my hands down in there and I can't reach it. When you're building, you typically aren't going to spread it out over 2-hour intervals the way I do when I'm filming, or 3-hour intervals. We still have the power supply to install, but that should be very easy as well. And I can put these drive cages back in. Once again, they go in very easily with these pieces here. You leave these screwed in, don't change this. They're already in the right position at the right tension. So you can just align it with the keyholes in the back here, and then just slide it down and it locks in. And then we'll grab the thumb screws that are a little different. And then there's a little securing point right there that locks in that drive cage. You can put 2.5-inch or 3.5-inch drives in these. And then on this piece here, you can put 2 more 2.5-inch drives. So you've got plenty of cable space for internal storage is what I want to say. And then these are only going to go in one way, so you can't get it wrong. Generally speaking, you want the holes facing you, right? And then you're just going to align that with the holes, let it drop down, and then grab the thumb screw. And everything that I put back today will be one less thing I got to worry about where it goes back. We have a number of panels we've removed. Some use different screws than others. And keeping all of that straight, unless you do this every day and you're familiar with this case, that may be a bit challenging. Tomorrow, we'll come back and do part 4 on this, where we'll take out this frame and install our power supply. We'll open up the other fans, place them in the back. We'll put our liquid cooler together. That's going to go back into this piece we've already removed, and I have to remember how I'm going to put that back in. Probably shouldn't have taken that off yet for that reason, but we'll figure it out, right? As long as we don't have any missing screws. And on top of that, Lian Lee's given us lots of extras. I know I just knocked one on the floor, but after we're done today, I always have to pick stuff up off the floor. That's just normal part of post-production in this place. And then we're going to be utilizing this grommet, and you'll see it's kind of glued together here. In case you don't use it, it's a much cleaner look, right? If you're putting an air cooler on here, you don't necessarily need this. So instead of giving you a plug for this, what they've done is they've just left it sort of connected together in manufacturing. And if you want to use it, then you pull them apart like this. And that way you can fit the water block through here and put it on and let the hoses run back here where you can't see them. And then your fans will be here with the radiator on the other side, and it's going to just be this beautiful white case with glass on top, front, and side. Stunning. It's going to be stunning. And I'm not frustrated building it. Everything's fitting just like it should. And hopefully there's nothing wrong with these fans. I don't think there is. But we have 30 days to return because we bought from Amazon Warehouse. And because they were returned, it saved us about $50 on both boxes, which to me was worth it. If I'm only saving 10 or 15 or 20 bucks, it ain't worth it to me. I'll just buy new. And then we'll figure out if we need those other cables or if they're a replacement for this. These are extra screws we won't need, so they can go in the box here, I suppose. Anywhere will be fine since they're already in their own little baggie. So we don't have to worry later, where did those go? And then all of these little extra rubbery bits and plastic covers that went with our fans, you may choose to put these aside into their own little baggie for future adjustment, or you can throw them into the trash or recycle bin, along with our documentation on how those fans work, which we still might yet need. Now that's a little bit of a project because I was trying to mostly focus on the work today, knowing that if I was interacting with the chat a lot, I probably wouldn't get much done. And even doing that, I didn't get much done because of the familiarizing myself with how everything went together. And without reading any documentation or being prepared, I just handled it no differently than a support call from a customer. But, well, it's all fresh on my mind. I'll just leave everything on the workbench so we can pick up tomorrow where we're leaving off today. And I'll give you guys one last opportunity for any questions or comments. If you've asked something earlier and I did not respond, it's likely because I didn't see it. Please ask again now that I'm paying attention. And I'll check the phone one more time while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions. A thank you again to our friends. Philip. It's got two different. Phil Stodd in our chat room sent a $50 PayPal contribution. And again, a thank you to Douglas Burchell for a very generous Amazon gift card. Our friend Frankie B for his generous Amazon gift card. Our friend Mark Gaines for his generous Amazon gift card. Our friend Peter Laycock for his generous Amazon gift card, of course. And to all of our members and all of our supporters and all of the super chats. Let me just see if I've missed any of the super chats. Peter VZ with a €1 super chat. Tom Jackson with $7.77. Find Me in Hawaii with $4.99 and membership renewal. Find Me in Hawaii has now been a member on month number 30 now. That is so awesome. Thank you for that so much. It means the world to me. Shop Persian Rugs also renewed membership. And what else did I miss? Our friend Peter Laycock who also sent a 10-pound super chat contribution. And 2 new members today, Sean and Tudakali. Welcome in. I hope you'll stay with us and remain, no matter whether you're a member or not, remain a part of our community here, because that's more important than anything else, is that we continue to build on this amazing community. And the more like-minded individuals we can get, the merrier it can be. So welcome aboard. Paul Connolly says, thanks, Carrie and Mara. Great job today. Right on. Thank you, Paul. Hey, we did get the motherboard mounted, the cooler off, and the fans put in. Probably a good hour was just figuring out how to dismantle this case, which is, like I said, it's enjoyable for me to figure that out. And this thing, I can tell already it's going to be a beauty. And I can tell you from the performance and the little bit of time I've had with this motherboard, that 9900X is a bargain at $382. The motherboard's a little expensive, but if you get it without the Wi-Fi, you can save some money. But then if you want to add the Wi-Fi later, you'll spend more than if you would have just bought it with Wi-Fi to begin with. You know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I suppose. Did we miss the Starship launching for the 6th time? Did that happen while we were live? I think SpaceX launched 3 Falcon 9 rockets in 24 hours the other day. And then they were doing the giant Starship launch today. And I just saw a comment about it exploding, the booster exploded at sea, but I think it's supposed to. I think what it's simulating landing on land, but because it's not land, when it flips over and falls, it self-destructs. But I didn't watch the launch. I don't know what happened. I completely forgot about it, to be honest. It's kind of a last-minute thing. Zvi Manor says, I have a suggestion. Position the fan so that the bottom right fan is aligned with the cooling fans. Yeah, we'll revisit that once we get the cooling fans in position. I'm kind of thinking the same thing, that at least that could be like one flowing. But I also want to look back at the marketing pictures for this case and see if they're showing it that way. Because there are some marketing pictures, and it doesn't look like they have them exactly aligned. But generally, the marketing pictures are done by professional marketers who know the psychological positioning of products and colors. Like every time you see a picture of a watch, the time is always 10 after 10, because having the hands in that position does not obstruct the manufacturer name and gives the watch the best aesthetic. Either that, or the only time they take pictures of analog watches is when it's 10 after 10. Did you ever notice that? Anyway, let me just jump over to the window capture and we'll look at that together right quick. It does appear in this photo, you know, I'm not putting any fans up at the top here. So we're going to have these fans here across the right side vertically, the 3 fans down below, and then the 2 fans in the back. Because I'm putting the glass piece up here. And obviously when I do that, I can't put fans up there. And it does look like it's a little off-centered. It does almost look like they split the difference a little bit in the spacing down here at the bottom. And we are going to use that exact liquid cooler as well. So we should be able to replicate this marketing photo. Now, why they didn't align all these, it looks like they aligned the top fan vertical with the top fan horizontal, but they did not do the same at the bottom, or it's just the angle of the photo. But yeah, something to watch for sure, and I appreciate the suggestion. Let me go back over to camera 1 here and we can finish with any other comments, questions, or concerns. Zach Bischoff just renewed membership, now a member for 22 months. He says, hello, Carrie and chat. Glad to be a member of this amazing community for nearly 2 years. That is so awesome, and we're so glad you've chosen to be a part of it. We're glad to have you here, of course. Patrick says, I'm so impatient. If I had money to do a major Wait, let me rephrase. I'm so impatient that I did have money to do a major upgrade in July. Ended up settling on a Ryzen 7700X based desktop. And I think the joke there, the LOL at the end, is because the new Ryzens had just come out, the new Intels, if he'd have just held on a little bit. But nothing to turn your nose up at. The 7700X is a great CPU. You have so many CPUs to choose from now, from the Ryzen 5, 7, and 9, the Ultra 5, Ultra 7, and Ultra 9. I don't really think you can go wrong with any of them for the budget. There's no real clear winner here aside from your personal preferences or any particular applications a particular make and model of CPU may perform better, and that's important to you, but maybe not important to anybody else, right? And that's all that matters. If that's your decision maker, waiting a couple weeks for the next chip that may be 10% faster may sell out and may sell for a much higher price at a product introduction. It may sell higher than MSRP, will always cost you more. If you stay a generation back, you'll save a lot of money. And you're not going to miss much in performance. So nothing wrong with being impatient in that regard. Dustin Fuller says, great show as always. Right on. Thank you, Dustin. Thanks, of course, to Mara, who's doing all of the administrative work in the background. It's a lot. We call it the paperwork, but I am so glad she's doing it, because that was a major, major part of this job that was keeping me from broadcasting as often as I wanted to. Patrick said he paired his build with a Radeon 7800 XT, 16 gig external, discrete GPU, DGPU. Yeah. Yeah, again, there's a good value there to be had. Phil Stott says, I think the RGB colors on this build, when it's all lit up and powered on, will take your attention away from any alignment. Maybe. Maybe it'll draw your attention. You know, if you have a bunch of straight teeth and one crooked tooth, no matter how white they are, that crooked tooth may stand out a lot more because they're so white. We'll find out, but very easy to adjust regardless. John Paul Bacon says, great stream today. Take care. Peace and blessings for all. Thank you, John. Back at you, my friend. Bill Sony says, great show. Great case. Agreed. And for the price, I mean, it's not twice as much as that Black Widow case, but it's definitely twice the case. So I'd say this is the better value here. Better value doesn't mean it's cheaper. Better value means you're getting more for your money. Costco isn't necessarily cheaper to shop at, but generally speaking, what you get for you're getting more for, price per ounce if you're buying food, for example. Generally speaking, of course, there's always exceptions. Luke Greenia says, I think Carrie hates this case. That's called sarcasm. I didn't really want an aquarium case. I really didn't. But if I was going to have one, and I mean, there's a lot to choose from, I'm very satisfied when pairing this with Lian Li fans, and hopefully I will have the same enjoyment fitting the Lian Li cooler. Sometimes those coolers can be a struggle. I think Luke knows a little about that. Mark Gain says good night. I guess Buster left us a little earlier. It's past his bedtime, but thanks for hanging out with us, and thank you for just being the amazing person you are here in our community and supporting the channel like nobody else. Great guy. Can't say enough good about him. Mark Gaines suggests, Mitch Morrison, if you're going to go to Ireland and Scotland, be sure to do it between May and September for the best weather. Good advice there. Lou Greenia said that Hydroshift cooler is going to be a breeze. I'm expecting it to be. Of course, I was also expecting the Black Widow case to give me some cable management considerations and enough standoffs for a standard ATX motherboard. Am I unreasonable? Maybe. Elijah 52 Dickens says, I can't wait for the finish. Yeah, but then it'll be done. I like the process, but it should look amazing and perform even better than it looks. With the keyword being should. So here's where we're at as of today, Tuesday, the 19th of November. We'll pick this up tomorrow, Wednesday, the 20th of November, 2024. Thursday, we'll have the day off as I have some personal errands I need to take care of. And then Friday, we are back with our friends at Acronis to talk about Acronis True Image. So if you have any questions that you want answered directly from the horse's mouth, as they say, from Acronis, be prepared for Friday's show. And our man Begowden can answer any question you have on Acronis. I mean, if he can't, I don't know who could. So we're looking forward because it's always a good time when Begowden's here, and I always learn some new features of Acronis that I was not aware of. And we always have a good time. Like, the time flies whenever he's here. A busy week ahead of us. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. A super thanks to our friends at Acronis. They have 30% off to all of you for any of their products using our discount code in the links and the code listed below this video. We also have our friends at RoboForm, the password manager that I use, 30% off for all new customers. Use the link in our our video description below. And of course, our friends at SSD Keys, that's where I'll buy the keys necessary to activate Windows. If I put Office on this, I'm not going to overpay like the regular people in the public. I got a guy. That's SSD Keys, legal, legitimate license keys at a fraction of MSRP that Microsoft would happily take from you if you didn't know any better. And all of those discounts, again, 30% off. Everything has free trials you can try before you buy. And I personally stand behind everything I endorse here. I'm not aware of any YouTube content creator that does that. So if you have any issues or concerns or problems, you reach out to me directly. The buck stops with me. If I find out that one of my endorsements is ripping people off or doing something shady, we'll either get it fixed and never deal with that company again, or we'll get it fixed and the company won't be making that mistake again. So, look, mistakes happen. Rarely with the people that I endorse do they ever happen. And in such an unusual circumstance, you still need to have peace of mind. You're not getting ripped off. You're going to be okay. It's unlikely you're going to have any problems, but in the unlikely event that you do, you reach out to us here and we'll make it right. That'll wrap it up. I will see you all again. I hope you'll join me tomorrow. Same time, same place. It'll be 1 p.m. Phoenix time when we start, which is 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern. That's right. Daylight saving time always screws me up because Phoenix is always the same time. We never adjust our clocks, ever. Everybody around us does. Anyway, and of course, you can do the math where you live outside the United States, a lot of different countries, a lot of different time zones, but you can Google it if you're not sure. If you're watching this video after it airs, and you type in 1 p.m. Phoenix time into Google, to whatever time zone you're in, should give you that time difference. You can also hit the subscribe button and turn your notifications on, and it'll let you know based on the time zone you set in your computer what time the show starts at your local time as well, so you don't have to do the math. That'll wrap it up for me for today. I will see you all again very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.